Curse of the talented. Everywhere I go, they wanna change clothes and pose. But my wife be in my dreams, bruh. No, I couldn't see it. I saw a silhouette. I know I can make a way. But when I wake up alone, no, I just break out my phone. Thinking I can take as many songs. Unlit it when I haven't been her, but she only hit it once every better. If I say I love her, am I wrong?
Hello. Hey, everybody. We're about to get started. If everybody could start to take seats, get settled in, we will kick off. All right. Awesome. Firstly, welcome everybody to the Seven Peaks office. Thank you guys so much for coming. We have a very, very exciting event planned for tonight. Some amazing speakers to talk about probably the hottest topic there is out there since blockchain. But we're talking about AI tonight. I'm Chris. I'm a partner, head of business development here at Seven Peaks. I'm just going to give you a little introduction before we get started tonight, then I'll hand it over to our lovely panel. You're here for Gen AI, right? Gen AI Unwrapped. We're going to be talking about the innovations, the challenges, use cases, and investment insights. Pretty much everything you probably have a lot of questions to. I think we're anticipating a big Q&A tonight to get some insights, so we're well prepared. But just to get quickly started, so Seven Peaks Software, we've been here now in Thailand 10 years. We started the company 15 years ago. Team of over 250 people, very diverse company, over 35 different nationalities, really trying to bring in top international talent, build capacity here in Thailand, and really be able to have a strong value proposition in the market. Been able to serve over 400 customers across a number of different industries. Just some of the different customers that we work with: insurance, banking, retail, healthcare, etc. But really the focus is how do we try and build strong digital products that bridge the gap between business, user experience, and technical, right? And that's really where our focus is. One on, say, digital customer, the other side on digital transformation, SI type of work. But at the end of the day, we're focused on trying to build digital products that drive business outcomes for our customers. Similar to our panelists like Accenture and Microsoft, who are also doing similar types of work in their own ways. And really what we do is, we try to transform businesses from consulting and strategy through to product discovery, figuring out what do we need to build, what's the market fit, how do we build the right products for the right users, how do we bring in the right technology, up through, of course, full delivery to product growth, right? How do we go and take products to market? How do we bring in data and analytics? How do we bring in topics like AI, right? To be able to take products that we build to the next level. But today, we're talking about Seven Peaks Speaks. So Seven Peaks Speaks is an ongoing meetup that we hold typically every month, twice a month. Lots of different types of topics. We want to try and bring the hottest topics around tech to you. Not just tech, but also design, marketing, etc. Right? We know that this is, I guess, a market where things are moving very fast across those different disciplines. We want to try and bring you the best speakers, the best topics, to be able to grow this community, to be able to grow really just knowledge about lots of different things, right? And it's interesting for us. We also want to give everybody the opportunity to network. This is probably one of the largest Seven Peaks Speaks events that we've ever held, so thank you for contributing to that. Obviously, given our exciting topic, it's really a special one for us. Just in terms of what's coming up, so tonight is going to be a big night, but we also have an event tomorrow for all of our more technical people, GraphQL meetup tomorrow. Next week, we also have our e-commerce masterclass event. QR codes at the bottom here in case you're interested. E-commerce masterclass is going to be partnership with Stripe. And as always, if you enjoyed the event, give us some feedback. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hopefully the positive reviews are there. If they're not, it helps us to improve as always, and really bring the best experience, the best speakers to you at the end of the day. So that's enough about me, the company. Now we're going to hand it over to really the stars of our show. I want to be able to hand this over to Tiwa. who's going to be our moderator this evening. I'll also invite our panelists over to take the sofa here, get comfortable, and then to do some introductions.
So first off, let's invite our distinguished panelists up, Khun Ashu and Khun Lin. Khun Ashu from Accenture, and Khun Lin, I'll let them do their own. Guys, why don't you guys take a seat in the comfortable part, and I'll just lounge here on the sofa bed portion. So by the way, for those of you in the cheap seats, there are seats up here. There's also seats over here. We don't bite and we don't spit on you, so it's going to be all right. So please come sit up, and there's places over here as well if you guys want to sit down. All right. So before we get too far into the topic, if I could just have you each introduce yourself. By the way, my name's Tiwa. I'm currently an angel and a board member here at Seven Peaks. Been in Thailand for about 23 years doing startups, and I think many of you we've met before. So I'll hand it over to Khun Ashu and Khun Lin. Khun Lin, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thanks, Ashu. So my name is Apaporn, so you can call me Lin. I'm currently working as a lead data scientist at Microsoft. Now, I has been with company for almost 6 years. Actually, that long. And I'm working in the fields of AI. So currently it's a lot of engagement around generative AI. And yeah, that's amazing to see a lot of passionate around this topic.
Well, thank you so much. And again, everyone, welcome aboard. And thank you for this topic that's everywhere these days. So my name is Ashu. I'm with Accenture. I actually lead the digital and technology strategy practice for Accenture. We're in this building itself. But the key here was that this topic is something also very near and dear to all our hearts, because frankly, every client we talk to, and we're a professional services firm, right? So every client that I come out of, typically they will ask, okay, what is your point of view on Gen AI, right? So it's almost like you eat so much food and you get food poisoning. These days it's all about Gen AI poisoning. So, but we'll try to manage it well today. Thanks.
All right. So let's jump into the topic. And first, I think there's a lot of people in the audience who would like to understand a bit about what your companies are currently doing specifically in the region. We read a lot of news from the US. I think a lot of us want to know, okay, so what offerings does Accenture and Microsoft have specifically to Thailand and Southeast Asia?
Yeah, to answer that questions, I would like to share Microsoft partnership with the OpenAI. Actually, early this year, we just announced the third phase of partnership for the long-term partnership with OpenAI, which means that you can all access OpenAI service in Azure as a cloud provider. And apart from that, not sure if anyone has like Azure OpenAI service provision in your
How many people are using Azure? Anyone?
Yeah, in any of the regions.
All right.
Yeah, now the good news is that before this month, it means that everyone need to submit the access to get the request to get access to OpenAI. But now with specific region, it's Sweden, Canada, and other 2 regions, you can no longer need to submit the application to get access on GPT-4. So now you can accelerate your application just as fast as you would like.
By the way, does that also include Microsoft 365 Copilot?
The Microsoft 365 Copilot is still in preview, but yeah, this soon will be in GA.
Yeah, can you give us a timeline?
For the GA is in couple months away, but for Power BI Copilot, it will be next quarter, the first quarter next year.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So how about it with Accenture? What do you guys bring
with
to market?
Accenture, I think the question being, what do we do for the market? And I know that, as I mentioned, we're a consulting firm, we're professional services. We work with our partners like Microsoft to understand what is the client that they're trying to build, right, with this capability, right? So the way we look at our services, it's in 3 things. And I think someone was talking to me before the event. Are we going to be very technical? Are we going to be very strategic? Is it more business? So, of course, Accenture, with our size, we do everything, right? So I lead the strategy and consulting practice, which is all about the why. Why are you doing this? What have you invested in? What have you already bought, and what are you looking at on the horizon to understand how to package that right for your business capabilities? Then, of course, we do a lot of technology execution where we build the how, right, with all the people. We have offshore centers. We do all of that stuff. And then eventually we also do servicing, which we do operations, which means anything that when we put in production and deployment, if it's got issues, we help maintain that. Gen AI is too new. And I was, I think, talking to someone that if anyone says they are a Gen AI expert, you've got to think again, because no one is, trust me. It's evolving as we speak, so there's a lot of things happening within this field, but we do a lot of strategy, a lot of technology execution, and then some operations as well.
Got it. All right, so let's jump into this. And before we jump into it, one of the hardest things when we do AI talks is to understand what kind of experiences our audience has. So if you would, raise your hands as I make these statements and keep them up if this still applies to you. So the first question is, I played with ChatGPT and or downloaded the app. All right, keep your hands up. I use ChatGPT or other generative AI models on a daily basis. All right. I pay for GPT-4. All right. I've played with plugins, advanced data analytics. All right. I've used DALL-E, Midjourney, Adobe Firefly, or other diffusion models. Unreal 5.2, mind blown. I believe these tools will change the world. Okay. I've tried developing plugins and apps for my company. Wow, we still have some up here. Okay. I'm an AI, ML or AI developer or AI entrepreneur, keen to hear when I can get access to Azure's AI stack, including OpenAI. That's Tiwa's selfish question, because I do have an OpenAI, an AI startup that I'm working on. And then finally, I'm here for the free beer. All right. Okay, I mean, today so that's good, because we probably won't jump too far into tech topics. But I typically find it's helpful for us to kind of get a baseline. So Lynn and Ashu, let's start here. What high-level understanding should the audience have about how Gen AI works? Let's be specific to LLMs, just for today's conversation, to properly understand how to use it. So maybe Kunlin, would you?
Yeah, so to understand how to use generative AI specifically for the LLM effectively, I think that we should have the better understanding of what generative AI. So mainly it's just a subfield of the AI. It's nothing like different field of the AI. It's a subfield of AI that are expert in generating. Like it can be image, voice, or text from the historical data. So that's it for the generative AI. But the thing that make it different is because of the generative AI is built up from the foundation model. Not sure if anyone heard about foundation model.
What is a foundation model?
Yeah, it's totally different at the very beginning of my career, right? I'm being the data scientist. So when I got the request from user that I want to do object detection model, what I have to do is I walk to data engineer, get the data, and then try to label and do the model, and get the model ready for user and get the new requirements. So it end up that for specific requirement, I might have like 10 different models to serve, and 2 already obsolete because the latest one is come out very, very late, right? So the foundation model built in the same methodology, but instead of having 10 different models, we have one foundation model that can adapt to many tasks. Like one model can do sentiment classifications, one model can do translations, one model can do prediction. So that is the foundations of the GPT models. So I think this one make the difference in terms of like pace of speed of model development. And just to understand why it improve very frequently, because actually the LLM is try to predict the next word. That's it. But when we have a lot of the data, like the huge amount of the data, imagine we have 175 billion parameters. Suddenly the model can learn some emergent capabilities like mathematics. As you can see that it's also passed a lot of the exams, even like Microsoft exam, given the higher score than I was taken on that, right? So that also emergent capability that the model exposed. So that is how it works for the LLM.
I think we all, of course, read so much about this topic, right? We understand how LLMs came to being. You know, when you talk to, let's say, a CEO of a bank, right, who is not very technical, right? And I'll give you a little bit of that answer to summarize some of the data points that you mentioned, Kunlin. You know, what has happened? The first question I get is, so in fact, November 15th last year, so it's almost a year when ChatGPT became such a fire thing, right? The reason for that was, as you just described, right? People were training, so they were doing all this neural network things to predict, right? So they took language, they took all this input from all sources to start saying, hey, can you look for patterns as next words, right? So it was all, that's why it's called the large language model, right? So the key there was that these neural networks were getting better, people were coding it, the data to provide was getting huger and bigger, so that was happening. And then the compute power, right, with cloud and everything is coming together. So all those three things converged to say that when all of this was fed into these, models, you could predict something as the next word, right? So it was not a search engine for facts. It was an engine to predict what's next, facts or not facts, and we'll get to that. But the key was that as this technology improved, you could actually see that the patterns of our language, when you feed so much parameters, and you feed so much data, that it begins to predict correctly what the next thing might be based on history, right? And then what people said was, and the way it's merging is they said, now let's take things around medical data points. Let's take legal data points. Let's take music notes, as we saw. Let's take image pixels and see if there's a pattern and can we predict. So all of that is now merged into one. So it's become so powerful that they were actually talking that as you feed all of this, these LLMs or foundation models have kind of reached a point where by maybe 2040, 2035, they will have finished everything in terms of sources to feed. They might have to generate more data, right, themselves, if you kind of look at the power of all this coming together. Based on that, you could see that the prediction was very accurate in many cases, and hence people started, I was talking to someone, I have kids in college, right? They actually, and you asked the question about ChatGPT 4 versus 3.5. I use 3.5, and my son is in college, everything in home, and he's doing computer science engineering. It's all about kids using that even to do coding and things like that, right? Because it's predicting the next piece. So all of that came together, and now the question becomes, is this accurate? It's not accurate. How much can you use it for the right things within your own company? And where is this all headed? So in a nutshell, the analogy I would say is you do a bachelor's degree, it's kind of like a generic thing. When you get into a PhD, you get more specific. So somewhere in that spectrum, these models are being trained. And as we speak, I think companies are doing it all over, right? To say, hey, whether it's big companies or small, to say what is it that you can extract out of this to make it even better.
So before we continue, I actually want to dive into a couple things. For those of you who want to geek out a little bit more, the big shift happened in 2017. Google released a paper called Transformer Models. Attention is all you need. I wouldn't recommend reading it unless you like that type of research, but you can have ChatGPT summarize it for you and explain it to you like you're an 18-year-old, and it will do that for you. But basically what they figured out was attention is all you need. They can look at a sentence. They can look at each of the words of the sentence. They can understand the relationship between that, and it's called vector relationships, between each word all the way to all the other words, and also the words in that sentence, and understand it in context and predict efficiently. And that was the massive breakthrough that happened. And that's why all of a sudden in the last 5 years, we've seen this huge, tremendous growth because of that one paper. So, but before I go there, so Kunlin, when we look at, okay, we have these predictive models, but every time I search for something and I'm not paying for GPT-4, why does it always tell me that, oh, I don't have data? It only stops at in January 2022 now. Before it was September 2021, but now it's January 2022. Why? And do these models need to be consistently updated with the latest information?
Actually, that is the ground knowledge that has been learned from the historical data. It can be updated a bit to as you see the different two time frame, right? But to answer to your question, do we need the model to get updated to, let's say, like 2023? I don't think so, because majority of the knowledge, including the capability, the ground knowledge, has already been trained. I would say that more than 95%. So you can use that base model and then trying to use the prompt engineering. If you think about the pyramid upside down, I would say that add your data is the highest portion of the pyramid that would answer and respond to your use case already. But if not, then trying with the prompt engineer, try it with prompt engineer chain of thought, like ask it to do things like this and things like this in this step, follow the 3 steps just like we teach our children, right? That, okay, to answer this question, you have to gather this input and then trying to compare this and then get the final answer. If prompt engineering doesn't work, then trying to fine-tune. Fine-tune doesn't mean that you will have to train the model on your own, right? You have the base models and then add some of your data set, like prompt and completion. Trying to add it and see, it might be like 1,000 of the row of your information, trying to train it, and you get fine-tune version, like lean version, for example, and then test whether it works in your use case or not. If not, the small portion would be to train the new model.
Do you have anything to add to
Yeah,
that, Ashu?
I think that the point that you made, right? I mean, I work with a lot of data scientists. I did a little bit of statistical certification myself to kind of know all the things that the work. They told me that, to your point, more data will beat anything in terms of modeling. So all of things that are right now current is that if you have more data, then the training for that model will effectively do more things. One of the things I did see to your question, right? The 3.5 says, hey, I've got data till here. And if anyone who's used ChatGPT, they'll always tell you, I'm not supposed to tell you facts. I'm supposed to tell you the prediction again. But on ChatGPT 4, with all the new input and the algorithms, it's definitely different. I mean, there was a question, it was a joke, and I'll say that to the audience that'll make it relevant. If you ask, and I did that this morning, if ChatGPT 3.5, if I ask the question, I've got 5 clothes, it takes 5 hours to dry them. How many hours will 30 clothes take? It'll say 30 hours. Whereas ChatGPT 4 will say, hey, contextually, it'll take only the same time, right? So it's even with the model as well as with the data, it's different. It's done more. But data beats everything, really, is my opinion on that.
And would you say for the hello? So would you say for the first time, we've been telling all the companies and our whole industry, data is the new oil for the last, 10, 12, 15 years? Would you say we're finally there where data is really the new oil from an Accenture point of view?
I think when we talk to a lot of our clients, they know that all the stuff that they have for internal data is absolutely important. So like the first question I get asked by the executives is data quality even important? Is data hygiene still important when you have so much algorithms that can clean the data themselves? We tell them that data hygiene is still important, right? Because to your point, the clean oil is still needed, right? At least for internal stuff. And then if you're leveraging stuff that is outside your company, unstructured data or even structured data from the outside the company, that too will help. But yes, data is the new oil. Which grade of oil you use is key. Yeah.
So, okay, we're now 11 months since ChatGPT launched. And there are incredible opportunities. But first, let's look at some of the challenges we face. And I want to start here. And this is not a paid-for plug, but it is a plug because it is important to the discussion. So Ashu has written a book called Value Creation, Linking Information Technology and Business Strategy. Please tell us a bit about the book. And by the way, this is not a plug for his book, but it is available on Amazon. Please tell us a bit about the book before we jump into the question. Trust me, it's relevant.
So thank you. So the thing is, the book is called Value Creation. It's linking business and to IT strategy. I used to travel a lot. As I said, I'm originally from the US, been here now in Southeast Asia for almost a year. So when I was traveling sometimes between US and England, I was like just sitting, doing some work, and I'm like, I don't want to work during this long flight. So I started putting the book together based on some of my experiences. So the book is all about understanding what is a business capability really. People talk a lot about, value. Very few people understand what value really means. Is it more revenue? Is it lower cost? Is it reduction in risk? Is it doing something faster? All of those things equate into the equation of what value is, and how does technology support that? So that's the kind of work I'm doing right now for Accenture for many years. That end of the day, understanding what is the industry dynamics for a certain company, what business capability they want, and where does technology support that, whether it's quantum or metaverse or eventually GenAI or XYZ that will come in 6 months.
So that was the plug. You can buy his book. I don't get any commissions from that.
I'll pay you later. It's free beer.
But we've seen a ton of scary headlines around confidentiality and privacy topics. Like Samsung workers, I don't know if you guys have read this news, but Samsung workers accidentally leaked trade secrets to ChatGPT. Search queries can prompt Google Bard to divulge private chat histories. ChatGPT plugins can reveal personal information. people in our companies are using the tools to summarize meeting notes, create marketing copy, write confidential documents, write code. So Ashu, isn't this a massive risk for the organizations? And should companies adopt the tools?
Yeah, no, that's a billion-dollar question, right? With where we are headed, right? And there's tons of research on this as well, that this is a risk because you're talking about OpenAI, and I'm sure, Kunlin, you'll have examples, but I have friends in Microsoft headquarters where I was just talking to them that they cannot use ChatGPT when they're in the office. So because if you're doing something and you search for code on OpenAI or ChatGPT, now the code is public information. So who owns rights in this day and age? That's a debate that everyone is talking about, whether it's generation of content or pictures or music or anything for that matter. If you're searching something on this thing and you're creating something on this thing, who owns the rights to that? There's a lot of regulation being talked about. There's a lot of responsible AI work that people are doing. So whether it's the Americas or Europe or Southeast Asia, there's a lot of forums talking about governance and how we need to control this thing. Because it's like when cars were invented, if you read history, there was a lot of accidents because there was no traffic signals. There was no that system. So of course, eventually it came, and it's a given these days. So likewise, people are talking about AI will help equilibrium and all that democratization, but end of the day, it needs to be governed. So policy making, auditing, all that is fine. Then of course the second pillar of that is using technology itself to help, whether you call it removal of certain things, whether you call it, and if you look at examples, right, people are using OpenAI, but then companies like, especially in financial services comes to mind, Bloomberg or others that have created their own LLMs within their own walls, right? Specifically to their domain, to their business, and protecting the IP on that. I think that's where all this industry is headed. But even that regulation and governance is still work in progress, and it's happening at a lot of speed. But a lot of companies do ask us a lot about that. I don't know if there's anything to add.
Kunlin, I think there's a lot to add because from a Microsoft point of view, both like if we're just using the public tools and then versus what Microsoft's bringing. So what are your thoughts about is the dangers for the companies?
Yeah, as I am also taking care of the enterprise account in Thailand. So one of the requests when they experience with ChatGPT, they say, hey, can I just put my enterprise data into the ChatGPT, similar feature, but on Azure, and make sure that the data is not used for training the foundation model so that our competitors see the same result and so on, right? So that is where our Azure OpenAI is for. So mainly the data is your data. So we didn't use your data, and there is no one in Microsoft can access to your data, like the prompt you put in that, the response you get from the chat, right? So there's no one can access to that data, and also the data is not used to retain the models. So you can be ensure that all the confidential of your data, you can select option to protect whether you want to encrypt it. So if there is a spam to trying to sneak your data from your storage, right? So they cannot get the real or the actual data. That is part of the Azure OpenAI that we have to comply with all the security requirements standard of the enterprise. But I think that incident arises before we have the enterprise version. And now as the user, you can be benefit because OpenAI also has enterprise version. Azure OpenAI also commit to the enterprise version, right? So I think now it's depend on the use case. If the use case is public, so there is no sensitivity of the data, go ahead and use the ChatGPT, the free version. And if you want accuracy and the advanced feature of it, you just pay for a subscription. But if you use it for enterprise, then Azure is another option and another model that you can select. And apart from this, I think that is from the two perspective. If you shoot it right, then there is no problem around like data leak and confidential of the data, right? But apart from that, there should be like the govern how to use the GPT, for example, there is the funny thing that there is a colleague in my team. When we ask about the use case, they also use ChatGPT and OpenAI to get the use case. But there is a hallucination in that, and it seems that okay, use case seem valid, but it's not real. So with this one, there should be a policy or guiding principle from the company that when to use it and when which case not to use, and also with the precaution.
By the way, pro tip, and it doesn't matter whether you're using GPT models, whether you're going to look at a Claude model, whether you're looking at Palm within Google, all these different models, if you're developing with proprietary data, be sure to check on the privacy and how you have controls. If you go search, there was just a great article, I sent it to these guys last week, that this woman had listed out a table, and it has all of it, so you can go find it, like where are the differences in the privacy settings and what you have control over. Pro tip there. But it is something to consider. And also, like, or you want to go on-premise with a Llama model, which is Facebook's deal. They install on-premise.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think, and this debate is everywhere, right? Like, because when we're trying to do things, a lot of people, frankly, in the industry compare Gen AI to a little bit of, hey, is it just RPA? Is it just automation on steroids versus generating something? Because those use cases of creation are not as as common as are described. So there's a whole debate about what it can be used for. But the key there is, like, there's a lot of research happening with a lot of these big firms as well to say that there's two trains of thought, right? There's one that there's, you've got all these LLMs that have been trained by this data, so it's neural networks, it predicts what next would be. Then there's what they call symbolic technology, right, which is all of our programming that we've done. So that will not generate things, but it's more reliable. So somewhere in the middle, like just like the human brain, no matter what we do, we are reading stuff, but then we're using some judgment, right? So they're trying to use that, they call it grounding these days in the industry, to say that how can hallucinations or wrong data, because this thing is predicting. Even if you give it wrong information, like there was some example, I think, like some of the examples you mentioned, as well as like Elon Musk has died because there were some people who died in his car or whatever. But so it would just give very factually that data point, right? Because it's just predicting. So you have to combine some of that, and there's a lot happening. There's people who are trying to say that these neural networks that were used as LLMs, that were, some examples, then this company Anthropic comes here and says, which I think Amazon is also using in saying that maybe the way to think is, like, a human child does not learn by predicting next words. You don't say, it's very contextual. You don't say that I will drink cold water and you say, okay, on a table. You don't. So the human brain does not just learn by prediction of next things. It learns by contextual, by syntax. So maybe we have to build the models with some of that in mind. So people are still doing a lot of research.
So for those of you who don't know, Anthropic was, Amazon just put in $2 billion. Their model is called Claude. Their latest version is called Claude 2. And they have a model that they try to keep it, to give the safety element, they have what they call a constitution. And so the model is always built against the constitution. So it's a different approach to trying to keep what we call in the industry, alignment. Alignment, if you hear this word in AI, is talking about alignment with humanity. So their approach to it in their particular version is what they have, a constitution that sits on the side of that.
And not to geek out on this, I'm sure we all, as I said, we read so much, there's so much happening here. I think I was talking to these guys when I shared some of the things. A lot of people are saying that everything in Gen AI especially is being told that we need to mimic the human brain, right? That's what we read, how we think, how we have patterns. We have like almost 90 billion neurons firing away at any data input given to us. So what they were predicting is maybe that's a wrong way to start with this evolutionary technology. Maybe the way to start is there's some researchers working on looking at insects, right? Insect brains. So they did like a dragonfly, which has 1 million neurons at the most, but it has 0.5 seconds to kind of hunt its, the insects that it bites. So how does that make decisions? It has 4 layers. How does that happen? So they're doing a lot of research to say maybe that's how we need to start mimicking some of this Gen AI to kind of get to that level where humans have evolved. And that's a great point, because we've evolved after billions of years. So this technology is still on its cusp of starting. So we need to look at some other examples of building different models and putting more inputs to it, maybe. Right.
Okay, we'll avoid the philosophical issues about humanity and our existential crisis. So, but let's. I'm going to skip the employment question that we had. So let's get into this. So the last few questions have talked about the challenges using the tools within the company. But let's look at the challenges when using the tools for our customers. So the last few questions, like as an enterprise, should we use the tools? But what about for our customers? And so if we look at some of the headlines we've seen this year, on Amazon, an AI-generated book about edible plants encouraged readers to collect poisonous mushrooms. New Zealand supermarket recipe bot, when asked what to do with water, ammonia, and bleach, it gave the recipe for lethal chloramine gas. they had to change it. National Eating Disorder Association chatbot advised one user with anorexia to continue to lose weight. Hallucination. CNET published wildly inaccurate articles about personal finance regarding compound interest, and it was all written by AI, and it was completely wrong. So, like, when we look at these, Ashu, doesn't this feed directly into the reluctance you mentioned in your book? You know, so one of his points in his book is about the reluctance of organizations, particularly large organizations, to adopt technology. So, as a company, would it be better to be a laggard in AI rather than an innovator? Like, hey, look, I'll just wait for this shit to get handle itself. I don't want to be on the forefront.
So I think whether you're a laggard or a complete innovator, so there was this very famous book, since we're talking about books, it's called Crossing the Chasm, right? So people said, hey, many people experiment, and then some people adopt early, and then some people are kind of late adopters, and then eventually some are just like, oh, we'll get to it when we get to it, kind of thing. So I think and I get this question so much with Gen AI, they say, hey, a lot of people say, is it just a fad, frankly, right? Metaverse came and gone away, cryptocurrency, minters, like because of that, they didn't fly. We have quantum, which is unstable hardware. So is Gen AI? So the answer that we typically give a lot of our clients is that this capability is, frankly, we think is here to stay. Despite the hesitation and the risks, the way to think about it is create some kind of a center of excellence. Do experiment with this. Create the right framework, because there's a lot that goes into the architecture, right? There's of course the infrastructure, there's foundational models, there's applications. Experiment with the right use cases where you have minimal risk. And the way to kind of keep it very simple is, if you're using it for employee experience, there are two things, right? Employee experience or customer experience. So employee experience means you're enabling your employees to do something a little faster, a little better, giving them better experience, right? Those experiments for productivity gains is something a lot of our clients are actually using. They're doing things, whether it's knowledge management, this, that. Do that, set that foundation so you're at least ready to compete. For your customer-facing applications and things that are outside, be a little more risk-averse. And I think a lot depends on the culture as well. It all depends on what the leadership wants to do. It also depends on the industry. So there's a lot of factors that come into play to know that if you're going to be a laggard versus an innovator, what are the factors? How much investments have you made? What are your competitors doing? Putting all that together, our suggestion always is do experiment with this, put the foundational pieces ready so that when the thing hits, to your point, when everything is ready, that you're also ready somewhat. Yeah.
So Kunlin, how from your experience and your customers and from Microsoft's point of view, how do we make this safe if I develop an app? And let's say if we just did a simple chatbot to do customer service. I just wanted to answer on behalf of my customers. How do I know it's not going to make up something, hallucinate, and completely say something that's going to sink my company?
Yeah, the answer is quite simple. So it's kind of need a lot of test scenarios. So as a language model, we know that hallucination is one of the things that is there. So we need to try to mitigate that one and try to reduce that. How to reduce that one. So we have to have the test case, and then trying to use prompt engineering, and not only for the prompt engineer to help to reduce the hallucinations, right? Even you use GPT-4, the research paper say that it's reduced hallucination by 20%. So, but still the hallucination is still there. So we will need to have human in the loop. That is one of the case. So we will never have autopilot. As you can see from the name of the Microsoft, we never use DB autopilot or Power BI autopilot, because we still need human in the loop to validate all of the context that AI generates. We still don't know that if it's kind of hallucinations. So, and it's even make more impact when we discuss about use case that will have the customer facing app, like customer service, right? So what about if customer call you and asking for the product, and then it's answer the competitor product? So that would be the case that is very impact, right, from customer perspective. So I did the test with one of the FSI in Thailand. So they have this concern.
Sorry, FSI?
Yeah, FSI, Financial Service.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank
so one of the bank in Thailand. So they have this kind of initiative that they want to enhance their existing chatbot. At the end, after discussing around this, and they have tested it by their own on how to do the prompt engineering using all the techniques like chain of thought, graph of thought, tree of thought, and so on. And it turned out that they reduced the scope to do prototype internally first, and then get getting the response and feedback, and also do human review, so that they get all of the data point to be ready to use that to adapt to the customer facing version. So I think it's more just add to Ashu points. It doesn't I mean the use case will not ready with the prompt for the first version. So it will be the evolution of the prompt and also another technique that will help to reduce all the hallucination and make your application ready for customer.
By the way, pro tip for prompting, the basics is who, what, when, where, how, why. That's the simplest version of how you start to prompt it properly, but then you can start to constrain it as well. For those developers in the room, if you really want to get into this, you can choose different models. So you can choose a smaller Llama model where you can constrain it further so you can get those things out. And then you can also look at agents. So then maybe you're using a GPT model here, but then you install another agent that does a double check against the first one. So you install a second one. So whatever this outputs, this one's checking to make sure, is that okay? And it goes, no, that's not okay. That's not the right answer. And so you can do these types of things. So these are the types of ways that you can actually start to control some quality issues, but it is a challenge. And by the way, just an insight is, those of you who aren't paying for GPT 4.0, what's the difference? 3.5 was trained on 175 billion parameters, basically words. 4.0 was trained on 1 trillion. And it's not just 5x better, it's actually a 10 exponential better. So that's the difference. Do you want to
and
comment
just
on
to
that?
add on the content part that is also show up in appropriate content, right? So recently Azure just released Azure Content Safety Service. It will have AI to monitor and evaluate your response, saying that, okay, this response has like harmful level, like 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it allows user to customize the level, like the acceptable level. If it is like internal use applications, you might allow that, okay, it's medium risk, so I will review it before I put it to user. But if it's customer, I will block the content. So you can use that one as the post-processing of the Gen AI.
All right. So, this year we've been talking about AI. We've been playing with it, and it is super cool, and it's blows your mind, and all this stuff. But come on, have we seen any real corporate implementations with real corporate value? Can both of you share 1 or 2 examples where corporate has implemented Gen AI with some degree of impact for the organization? That it's not just like, yeah, it's kind of cool. It made up some nice copy for my marketing.
Yeah. So no, I think that's a great question, right? And I think from our experience, I mean, doing this thing, if you ever saw the announcement, a plugin just for Accenture, we invested $3 billion in Gen AI as a company in itself and in our things, right? To make sure that we are preaching to the choir and doing things as well. So 2 things that come to mind is, and for me, it's going to be all about productivity examples. I know that it can create a lot of things, but we worked with marketing folks as well, but it's mostly not for creation, it's for research. That's what we've seen. But the examples I want to talk about are, again, on productivity. We've worked with 2 companies, a very big oil and gas company out of Malaysia that has done, they've been trying to put knowledge management internally on steroids. And what that means is they had almost like a 250,000 documents lying around for the way you do maintenance on some of their rigs. And it's just things that would take, training and people's experience to be able to use that. What they did with this thing was they kind of put all of that, fed it into an internal, LLM using some of the things from the outside. But now they're very easily able to do things around predictive maintenance for specific machines that are not at risk, using that knowledge management on some of the digital devices that their plant and people work, the engineers. So that has definitely increased productivity quite a bit. What we are seeing is right now is that because we are a professional services firm, we look at how you can kind of get value out of this. It's not only about preventative maintenance. Like if some machine is about to fail and they're going and looking at a certain part, it's integration with the parts, it's integration with the scheduling, it's integration with the supplier. That's where the value is coming out of, right? So when we put the business case together, we're saying, okay, how much are you saving in, of course, hours and cost in general, but then with the integration, how are you doing that with other systems? We've seen something like 20-30% savings around that, just those kind of use cases. And of course, the industry promises 40, 50, 60%. We've seen 20 to 30% right there, especially when it comes to using Gen AI for knowledge management and bringing all of that together.
Quinlin, do you have some examples that you can share?
Yeah, one of the example that show, has a clear example of the capability of generative AI is CarMax. CarMax is one of the well-known used car retailer in US. So they use it to generative AI to gather all the review, comment, and feedback from the previous buyer and gather it and then create a very interesting review for the clients. And that is it turned out that the time each visitor spend to make a decisions on their purchase is shorter. So that is how the impact is made. And previous, actually this kind of initiative the company has very long time ago, but from the effort perspective, they don't have people to read all of the thing and trying to gather in such information in the conclusion way that will make the benefit. So they use generative AI and it's help to increase that kind of impact.
One thing if I could just add quickly, I think CarMax that's a great example. The one thing that I help with clients is to think about that is, again, pain versus gain, right? So a simple matrix, how much investment, how easy data sources and all that kind of stuff. As you put some of those things together, the net of it in terms of the use cases that are really the industry is absorbing, I've seen is 80% of the time, if it's about documents, it's about extracting things. If you can put 80% of the time the machine's doing that, they're better at crunching things than a human brain. And then 20% is inferring and using it for, that's where the difference is. Whereas earlier you would tell data analysts and things to put things together. So 80% of the work was gathering stuff. Now it's changed to the opposite. It's more about, okay, let this technology assimilate what we have, and then where are we going to use it? Of course, within the bounds of data accuracy, etc.
By the way, just another quick pro tip, which is when he talks about documents, there's something in the AI world, we call it vector embedding or document embeddings. So what happens is you take those documents, you put it into Pinecone or Redis or one of these other things, and it does a vectorization of those documents. And then that works with an LLM, and the LLM understands those documents. And by the way, when you do that with your documents, you can also make them semantically searchable, which means instead of it just being keyword search, they're actually semantically searchable, which is kind of cool. It's a benefit by vectorizing your documents. But then that integrates and works with the LLM, so it feeds the data. So when you ask the question to the LLM goes and checks those documents and says, okay, where do we know this? And then once it knows it, grabs it back, and then it processes and goes, okay, what do I think this person's asking? And I will try to predict the right answer for it. So that's the way this all fits together in the technical backend. So let me go back to a question that I skipped earlier. So you just talked a lot about efficiencies and how this is adding. So are people losing their jobs or what? And are we going to all be out of jobs? Like, you're telling me that it can code, and we look at GitHub Copilot. I'm a programmer. Am I out of work, or what's going on here? Because if you would have asked any of us in this room 12 months ago, what's the safest job to have in the world? I would have said programmer. You're never losing your job because you're a programmer. But suddenly we see it's writing code. Should I be scared?
I think that's something we get asked about all the time, and you get all these memes and jokes that I think someone was like, hey man, we can't fire you because we don't know what you do. So anyway, but all that is fine. But the key is, I think what happens in any new technology, frankly, right? Paper to books to pen and to calculators to computers, right? People are generally scared. But what happens is there's a transformation of the job versus just a pure replacement, right? So for example, when ATMs came, the bank tellers are still there. They're all there in the branches. Their jobs change, right? People still go get cash. It's changed. So the point is that you can use this technology. And I was talking to someone, because as Accenture, we do a lot of research work in our strategy research with schools like MIT or Stanford. They're beginning to talk about Gen AI more like as an intern, as an augmentation for you itself. As you said, you've got to ask the right questions, right? That is the key for this technology. So in a nutshell, the jobs will morph and change, but they won't just go away, right? End of the day, it transforms some jobs, it replaces some jobs, but then it also creates a lot of jobs, right? So yes, I was talking to a chief analytics officer in a company, and he said, it's very funny, to your point, that you would say that from hiring computer engineers, we're now looking at people with humanities, with arts backgrounds, because we're now concerned about how much bias does my data have? How much bias does my modeling have? If I'm creating an insurance product, and I'll give you a US example because that's where I've just moved from. If my algorithms and the data are pointing to a certain zip code where the rate or actuarial services, how you determine risk for an individual, is based on how he or she, where he or she lives, the color of the skin, and all those kind of things happen, then I could be liable for certain models. How do I remove some of that? So there's new jobs always evolving. But the point is, I think knowing some of this is important from top down, really understanding where you're going to leverage it, and then training and retraining and things like that will be needed.
Quinlin, do you have some thing to add there?
Actually, I'm in the era where the data science career just boom, right? So I think that it's always come with when we have new technology, people will get scared that okay, there will be no data analytics, will be displaced with data science, right? But that is not the case. I'm still having clients asking if you know someone who is good at data analytics, I'm seeking for data analysts, right? And also I'm seeking for data science. I think different career have different strength, right? The same for the era of generative AI. Now it's also open up the new career like prompt engineering, AI ethical, AI content curator. Without this kind of the expertise, you cannot implement AI, generative AI successfully. So the word that AI will displace human, I think that also true with specific case that okay, if that human can do very automate the thing that can automate with AI, then that is true, right? So we will need to adapt to the change and know how to use AI to do the thing that kind of can be automated.
It's true. I mean, before YouTube, we didn't have the word influencer, right?
Exactly.
All right. So just so we can open it up for questions, actually, what organizational changes or talent do companies need to develop and recruit in order to build up their Gen AI capabilities, both for internal and external use?
No, so I think, like I alluded to in the jobs part, is what kind of organizational skills. I think three things, right? We see is that first, the leadership, depending on the size of the company, even the leadership needs to know some of this stuff. And what we're pitching always is, even at the board level, at the C level, at the VP mark, and then the coding level, you need to know what the power of this technology is. So some training, some awareness, data literacy, AI literacy is needed, because digital transformation is a playing sport. You have to be in it. You can't lead from the sidelines, right? So that's the first thing. You got to have a plan to train. There's companies, big companies and small ones that have already invested in training all of their employees on some of these technologies, right? So that's one. The second, I think, is knowing, crazy amount of collaboration, and we talk about it with the whole agile stuff and fast fail and all that kind of stuff. You absolutely need what we call bilinguals, right? Or trilinguals even. You can't have someone who only knows data science or data engineering. Absolutely, that's important. You can't just have people on the business side alone. You need people from technology, data and business to come together. So hence that collaboration, those pods, the way you organize your company is going to be so key to roll out this kind of new capability, because that kind of translation of services within your own company is going to be important. And then the last is, because it's evolving, you need to, it's kind of like we talk about having three lenses, right? A telescopic lens, a binocular lens, and a microscopic lens. You got to know some of these startups that are experimenting even more than you. You got to have some kind of an ecosystem play to know that, okay, this is what I'm doing, watching what others are doing, and having some kind of partnerships at that level to kind of play it properly so that you're advancing in this technology. All those three things we feel are very important for companies to bring together to really avail of this in whatever time frame.
And Quinlin, can you maybe give us a bit more insight into what technical capabilities do I need? Like, if you're you're looking at a client, what kind of staff do they need? What kind of technical capabilities do you think people need to be ready for this and to really start to build up their capabilities?
I think the required skill should be like logical thinking. It's not about the technical skill. I would say even technical people, right? So one of the challenge I'm seeing is that when we have engaged with customer, they come with that, okay, Microsoft, can you show me list of the use case? I will select from that because I want to use Gen AI. Then the questions would be like, to use Gen AI for which purpose. So I think the first thing is to start with kind of like the clear objective of the business problems, the pain point that has nothing to do with the technical thing, right? And after that, if you have clear objective, then it start to understand the AI capability. You should not put Gen AI as the first in your equation that I have to use this. And then think about problems. I don't have problems. Okay, maybe it should be the problem. Most of the organizations start from that, and there will be no actual use case from that one, right? So capability of the AI, because we have variety of the AI, artificial intelligence, generative AI, machine learning, and deep learning. And usually the use case from customer is not generative AI, only the technology that can solve that one. It will be the mix between like machine learning, programming, custom script, and so on to make the application work. And the third one is around the data. That will, I think that would be most technical in my part, right? So we will try to see what is the required data to make that use case work. So I think that all conform to the logical thinking skill that I think is required.
And then let me,
Just to add to that, right, with all the use cases that you mentioned, a lot of and I can't name the client, but they have 3 business units.
who is the client again?
So they talk about
I gave it a shot.
we have these businesses, and can you just give us a repository of all the use cases that we can do in GenAI, and we'll start? It leads to such a confusion because everyone says their use case is the most important, right? So we have created what we call a center of excellence. We help with prioritization. So any new technology like this or anything that's going to come, you want it to go through some kind of a incubation period within the company itself, right? So you create a center of excellence, you call it innovation, whatever, digital labs, whatever you want to call it. The key is, because you won't have the resources, the skills are tough to find, right? So you do that, prioritize it for your business units before it becomes a little more real. Because that example of use cases just reminds me of my horror stories all day, working with the C-level saying, hey, get some discipline here, because all my EVPs are saying they need their use cases done, right?
So, and I told you that it was going to have to do with his book. So, sir, the title of your book is Linking Technology and Strategy. So when you look at that, a lot of these executives are saying, but I want you to save me money so I can lower my head count in my customer service. I want you to be able to make all my documents searchable. Is that a strategy, or how do we link it back to strategy? And how does this technology link? And let's sell your book one more time.
Absolutely. I love this. Let's talk about my book more. So the thing is, like Kunlin mentioned, it all has to really start from business. And I know that we develop technology, and that's what I've done all through my life. But end of the day, yes, technology is an enabler for many of these use cases. So what I mean by business capabilities, and I walk into companies, big and small and medium, that do not frankly have a clue as to what strategy even means, right? They don't have a cohesive way to say, hey, I'm competing with this X, Y, and Z. This is where the industry will be. So I think I need to build my customer relationship management systems like this, or I need to do this for my employees. They all argue, right? We all know that a lot of, the direction for which business capability is important is not easily sought after, right? So the first thing to do is you've got to help the business understand how to prioritize which capabilities. That, even if you're doing a small technology project somewhere, where does this unfold into which kind of value parameter? And what we mean by that is it going to help me sell more, sell better, sell extreme price? Is it revenue growth? Is it all about cost cutting and operational efficiency? Am I making employees do things better, like the example where someone is doing preventative maintenance? Or am I reducing risk for my company? You need to just know ballpark where this project is fitting in so that you can have that dialogue to say, hey, show me the value that you're going to start with. Have you thought through the business capability before you're telling me to kind of come up with this report in BI, right? Or whatever. So it all has to start with saying, where is this all leading to in terms of value for the company? And let's have that dialogue, at least have some visibility. And that's where the business capability to the technology pillars, then to these technology capabilities, and hence the code has to start.
So on that note, by the way, we only talked about LLMs. There's a ton more stuff out there in terms of AI, different models that are useful to us, whether they're vision models, diffusion models, all kinds of stuff, predictive models that we're using for different types of use cases. We won't jump into that. But without further ado, let me go ahead and jump to questions from the audience so that we have how much time, how are we doing on time, Kunchandra? We're in good shape? I've been trying to keep an eye on it. All right, so why don't we open it up for you guys to ask any of the panelists or myself questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, My name is Roberto. If you had $100,000 to invest and you wanted to invest it into something Gen AI, where would you invest today?
Yeah, is there anybody specific that you're asking to?
Both of,
Who wants to
Both
take that one?
panelists.
Had $100,000 to invest into Gen AI, what would you do?
So I would buy 100 copies of my book and then do something with Microsoft. I'm just kidding.
Great answer. Yeah, to me, I think I would go for the common use cases that a lot of companies prefer to start. And now the common use case is around the knowledge search, like chat video and data. And I'm trying to build the automation tools to allow user to kind of like upload your data and then make it ready for chat video and data. And now it can scale to every organization. That is from my point of view.
And in all seriousness, I would totally second that, because what we're seeing in the industry is that, and I'm a big believer of employee experience somehow, that eventually once you do that, CX falls in place. That yes, if you've got that much amount of money, the first way to start is, how do I make my employees do things faster, better, with more accuracy for anything that they service their customers with.
I'll take that from an angel investor point of view. For me, what I'm looking for, and this also has to do with my own lack of knowledge about B2B. I'm really looking for, where can these tools be used in a B2B setting, where we're really going to use it to solve real problems that companies have? Because right now we're seeing a lot of sexy stuff, all the stuff that we can create, this marketing content, create these images. We can make a monkey juggle on a unicycle in the middle of Bangkok. That's fantastic. But what I'm really interested in is, how do we use these tools where it can go into? And so then that's something I would be interested to invest into, that we're actually solving real business. Because whether we're looking at oil and gas, banking sector, all these different industries have their own set of challenges that I think this can be utilized in. So that for me, I would be looking for not necessarily consumer use cases. I'm interested to invest into, even though my project's more consumer. So, okay, other questions?
Hello. Here.
Got it.
My name is Yemen. We hear a lot about the technologies and social issues. I also want to ask about some sort of environmental related issues. One, OpenAI trains its model, so it's used a lot of compute resources, so which also have some sort of environmental impact on that. So what are the futures of these future generative Gen AI models, and how it will cost the environment? So that's my question.
Oh, I
Ooh,
think
that kind of, yeah, good questions. Yeah, because as we get benefit of trying to train the huge model, right, it means that Microsoft need to also invest a lot in terms of compute, and it also have environmental impact. But there is also research trying to create the things that there is no need to retrain the model using the bigger parameter. For example, we have AutoGen. So the AutoGen is kind of like the framework that will have multiple agents. So now instead of me having like a lot of models working, so now I have one agent expert in this area. In the field of area A, and then another expert in area B, and then trying to orchestrate, which means that I still can utilize the existing model that has been trained already.
Can I just expand on that? So a lot of people asked, why is it only going up to January 2022 or September 2021? Why? The reason was because where we've been is that these models were trained up till there. If they want to add in that little new piece of news or that latest content, they have to take that and they have to retrain from the beginning. And they have to redo it all over again, because adding just that piece will skew the whole model, because they fine tune it based upon the past, and suddenly it will skew. So where we've been has been that. That's why we're stuck there. Not because the researchers aren't trying to fix it. And so what she's describing is ways that they're looking at how to get around that problem of having to retrain from the beginning. So that's one answer to how do we not have to retrain from the beginning and have to spend all this compute power. Yeah.
Right. And another technique that we also use, actually to prevent the need to retrain the model, we use a lot of compute, right? So we use the kind of, like, for example, for specific use case like the chat with your own data, you can use RAG, retrieval augmented generation, instead of like trying to train, because the model don't know my documents. That documents is used in enterprise only. So we use RAG to retrieve some of the informations and then put it to the prompt and then use OpenAI the same model to answer. Now it's know your context because you just feed it from the retrieval system.
All right. We had some. Who's got the mic? We got questions over here and up in the front row as well.
Hi. First of all, I want to thank Microsoft. We're actually using OpenAI through Azure, and we're also at the grant right now. So you guys are paying, I think, up to $100,000 of our OpenAI bill. So it's saving us a lot of money.
Woohoo!
Yeah. And we hope that it's going to get 10x cheaper before that runs out. So my question was actually for Tiwa. I want to know how you're currently looking at, when you're evaluating startups, the ones that are building it on top of AI, on those models, or not the ones that are training foundational models. How is it, like, how are you evaluating it? What are some of your key concerns now? How are you looking at defensibility, where they're capturing the value? We would love to know how you as an investor look at the key concerns and what should be addressed from a startup point of view.
Actually, let me kind of back up a little bit. So I started a project in January with my co-founder, Adrian Vansel, who used to run Ardent Capital here in Thailand. He convinced me to get back into the startup game, and our project was trying to fix problems with email. This is using ChatGPT 3.5. By the time March came around, and March, in my opinion, is going to be one of the most important months of technology history ever, because 6 things happened. Short version of 6 things happened was Llama 1 model got released on March 2nd, and it was leaked by Facebook. The truth was, 1 week later, they had a fully documented supporting site. It was a strategy, come on, to leak that. Second thing that happened was GPT-4 came out, and it was amazing and so much better. The next thing that happened was Microsoft 365 Copilot came out, and if you haven't watched that launch event, one of the greatest product launch events ever, and for the first time in my life, I've been working in technology for 30 years, I went, Microsoft's cool. I had never said those words in my life. Right? The following week, plugins got launched. The next thing that happened was NVIDIA's stack happened, and then the following week, Unreal 5.2 came out, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And we killed our first project, and we took a step back. So the way we look at it is, how much is the defensibility? Where are the foundational models lacking today, and where will they be? And then looking at the use case, like how innovative is it? And are these things that these big companies are, Microsoft's not going to fix everything. They're going to fix these things that are generalized to their enterprise consumers and then their direct consumers. And there's a lot of stuff in between. So we try to understand where is the defensibility of it. And so, for example, like if you looked at January 2021, Jasper launches, they raised 120 million on a 1.5 billion valuation, like I think it was 9 months later or something like that, and suddenly GPT-4 comes out, crushes their business, right? And Jasper, for those of you who don't know, was marketing copy writing, so they had prompts, they had their own stuff that was sitting on top of it. And so those types of models we try to look out for, like, okay, is this going to be crushed with the next release version? And what things are going to be defensible? And particularly when it comes back to data as the new oil, if you have your data, then it's very defensible. Because if you're producing data, and particularly physical world data, like if it's only online data, that's really easy to get. But if you have physical world data, now we've got some real defensibility, right? And so these are the types of things that we look for. I'm looking for, I should say, not we. I am looking for, very specific to myself, that I've tried to. And by the way, I'm still working on my thesis on this. I don't have it completed. It's just my working thesis at the moment. Yeah.
To add to that, I think because of the data, there are some industries, right? So of course there's a lot of online, a lot of digital, but there's some things are just physical, right? So like in the oil and gas where I was kind of doing some work, what happens is the data is important because you can triangulate. So if you have whatever digital data, but then you have heat data or sound data that you own, then you can triangulate for better decisioning. That's where it's all about. So that's where you have a competitive advantage. Yeah.
We had a question up here in the front.
Thank you. My name is Vladimir, and it was really fun to listen to you guys. My question is for a personal experience. What is the most unusual way you guys used ChatGPT or models like this? Thank you.
Do you guys want to answer? I mean, that's a pretty personal question.
I use it, but I'll give you an example of what we do in our office. And so we have, and it's funny because it's something that gives you how it's becoming pervasive, right? So I have people who are chartered. We all have sales quota, right? We all have to sell certain things, all of us, right? In the professional services firm. I have sales guys who wake up in the morning, use ChatGPT to say that I'm meeting the CEO or CFO of this company. What are the top 3 things on his or her mind? And what ChatGPT does is, if it's a public company, it knows what's happening in terms of news and this and that, and then you can prompting, asking it the right questions. It's almost like I feel like there's a whole thing called Socratic method of questioning, right? That's what is the most important skill, is keep asking. So a lot of people use it just for even a sales meeting. So so creative ways, whatever in terms of what the data will bring and what prediction will bring. But a lot of people are doing that. I mean, that's a funny example. But I don't know.
I'll give a personal example that I used it for this week, because as I'm entering into Q4, I'm now doing a review of myself. So I uploaded all my my personality profiles, my strengths, weaknesses, VIA character traits. I uploaded it up, said summarize it for me, and then I said, now you're my Ikigai coach. Can you take me through step by step, question by question, my Ikigai? And for those of you who don't know, like Ikigai is like, what are you good at? What do you like to do? What impact do you want to have in the world? I said, so I could review where I'm at. And that's this use case. Actually, I'm still going through the exercise right now, but ChatGPT 4 was my Ikigai coach.
Find out all about TiVo.
Yeah, and for my personal case, right? So I have my kids, like she is 5 years old. So I use it to try to have kind of proper conversation with my kid in based on the scenario I'm facing. For example, in one day she came back at the school and she kind of like upset with her friends that today she is not like my best friend anymore and so on. So I'm not sure how to handle this kind of thing and what kind of sentence that I should inform the conversation with my kid, right? So I'm trying to ask ChatGPT that there is very expert in talking with kids and understand her feeling, and then it's work. Suddenly it's work, and she said how. She looked a bit like surprised why mom saying in that way, but at the end I'm tell her that okay, I use my AI to help in that, so you should and then yeah, this is kind of funny, and I told my husband that next time you should use this because you're even worse than me.
So by next year the 5-year-old will be saying, did you just read that on ChatGPT, Mom?
I think I need this for my wife. Let's see, we had another question back here, young lady. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a question. My name is Kate, and my question is regards of education.
Sorry, can you bring the mic closer?
Yes, sure. Thank you. My question is basically how education is going to change with the use of AI, because we are all here lifelong learners, I believe. And you mentioned your kids. One of your kids is 5 years old, obviously. The other one is at college.
7.
And 7, yeah. So have you ever thought like what they have to be learning right now to be efficient in a new reality? Thank you for answering.
I can answer that if you like.
Please.
So my daughter is 17 years old. She's studying in Switzerland. So she came home in December last year, and when she got in the car, I'm driving home with my wife. It's like 11 p.m. at night, and she's in the back seat. I'm driving. I pulled up ChatGPT. I go, you need to see this, and she goes, starts clicking. She goes, oh my God, this is going to change my life. I said, that's right, sweetheart. And I said, first of all, you need to use it no matter what your school tells you. Said number 2, doesn't give you an excuse not to know your subjects. But number 3, the most important thing is this. You're going to have to learn something different than your 50-year-old dad ever had to do. And you need to know that because things just changed and the world just shifted. And your skill set's going to have to change with that. But the coolest thing is for me, and as an investor and looking at it and somebody who's super excited about technology always, is that if you guys follow Khan Academy, if you guys know who Khan Academy is, Saul Khan, amazing guy. They were a launch partner with GPT-4. What they're developing, and for the first time in technological history, we're actually going to disrupt education. I truly believe that. The big 3 are ripe for destruction, and the big 3 are education, government, health. Those are the big 3 that never get disrupted. And education is there. And what's really cool is you think about it, we're still in industrial age education, which is we all sit in the same classroom. They teach us at the same level. And by the time I'm 12, if I'm in lower maths, because I'm a little bit slower than this gentleman here, he goes to high math, he's probably going to stay in high math for the rest of his life, and I will stay in low math for the rest of my life. Now, what Khan Academy has built is now we can customize a lesson to that person's speed, still in the same classroom. And it is some of the coolest stuff. Microsoft just announced something just this week, actually, about this same thing where they're building tools for the classroom as well.
I think to that point, and education is one of the biggest use cases, and personalized medicine and healthcare, of course. But on education, so my son is in college, right? He's 20 years old. He was already using. So I was telling someone on the story before we started. I was on ChatGPT 3.5 and doing things. He's like, Dad, you need to just start paying $20 a month because ChatGPT 4. Everyone in my college uses that to do all homework, right? Everything. And I'm like, really? I mean, like, what would you learn? Like, so the key there was that they do all this homework, and then the teacher started to find out, and they're like, no, you can't be that accurate. So he got a bad grade. Whereas some other students there's other software that can infuse 10 to 15% error to make sure that the homework is all good. Now the teacher can't, right? So the point is that when I was a kid, calculators were not allowed in the exam hall, right? You were supposed to know the things. Now calculators are all there. Computers are all there. Likewise, this tool will be there. What you do with it, so the critical things will be, how do you think? What can you think out of the box? And like I said, these chief analytics officers, they're not saying that. Truly human inference, right? When we see anything, there's an inference we've already made. How do you do that? And these are just tools, right? So pen, calculator, computer, all this Gen AI, it will come, it will be used no matter how much you stop. But the key would be there are certain skills of thinking, of creativity that will, I think, be even more needed as we go on.
So I saw a bunch of hands pop up, but I want to get to this young lady over here first.
Hi, my name is Hema.
Go closer.
My name is Hema, and to her point, I think in education, everybody will be learning coding in school in future. That's something that we have not done in the past, but I'm sure it will add a lot of value for our future students. And my question is more business related. With the new age technologies coming in, how business can cope up with their operating model, their business model? In the past decade, we've seen SaaS coming up, and now we see every second company is a SaaS platform company in every sector. So how's the future looking like from the business point of view?
So let me make sure I understood the question correctly. So when we look into the future, are there new business models evolving out of this? Because where we've seen is SaaS has been kind of the biggest trend of the last 10 years, right? And so are there new business models? And let me ask my fine colleagues, because I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah, I think to me, as I'm working in the area of data and AI, I'm seeing more trend in like data as a service. So because now data is kind of a new air, I would say new oil and new air, we have to forget about PM 2.5, right? So yeah, because of that one, most of the company also discussing how to getting more data so that they can make use of it. Even it's used with the AI or generative AI. So they try to collaborate in terms of like how to monetize the data, how to partnership and sharing the data. Even FSI also partnership with insurance. And then the retail also partnership with FSI. So we are seeing this kind of the pattern. So I think data as a service, how can we expose our data in a way that we get the proper consent from the user and makes it available in the API format, for example, and make it as business impact.
So the key is, in digital, right? When you have so much data, how you use it to monetize it and get value out of that data. I'll give you an example. So financial services institutions, right? Banks, insurance companies, or even capital markets where you invest big wealth. All of them have started to, of course, gather data. They're doing things when you walk into a branch or on your digital phone. They aggregate a lot of that data and say, okay, if you are a Gen Z and you're starting a new job, depending on your demographic, this is where people generally spend, where this is, so they'll give you some of that data, and it's a better experience. It tells you that am I spending too much on beer versus pizza versus education versus whatever. So it gives you some of that aggregated data. So the key would be that, and then I was also working with a bank, a retail bank, where they were servicing some people who were paycheck to paycheck. They would actually put AI within small little things. It doesn't have to be all sexy stuff. small nudges, right? Saying, hey, you generally pay mortgage on the 27th of the month, your car payments are on the 12th, but you get paid on the 29th. At this date, your bank balance might go below this. We will charge you $20 or whatever. Can we prevent that? And giving that nudge. So that is what leads to customer loyalty, right? So things like that have to be thought through for every piece of your application to say that I can use data and AI to give it a better experience and get my competitive advantage.
Hey, I think there's quite a few more questions, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to call time. I've just been told by our big boss over here, and I apologize if I kind of ignored this side of the room for a while because I was faced that way. No, because I was sitting here, but the beers are this way.
The beers were that way, so they
and
were.
By the way,
they didn't
our distinguished panelists will be around. You're not going anywhere
Absolutely.
yet,
We're all
right?
here. We're all here.
And they'll be here. I'm sure you guys are just about to get crushed, so get comfy on the couch.
Absolutely.
Because I think there's a lot of questions. And so first of all, I'd like to thank Kunlin Kunashu for being with us this evening. Can I just wrap up? Is it okay? I'll just wrap up on behalf of Seven Peaks. Thank you to Seven Peaks for sponsoring us tonight, providing the beers and giving us the space to do this, putting together great content. And also thank you to all of you who came out to listen to us because we weren't sure if it's just going to be the three of us talking up here to ourselves. Khop kun kap. Have a great evening, Kap. Sawasdee kap.
Kunagap.